Alright, this is going to be a super fast tutorial on how to do this technique using the marquee tool to slice up a picture and shift it around. This particular one that inspired me is from Coach.com, and the picture that I'm going to use to edit I'm borrowing from Ethercycle on Flickr, flickr.com/photos/ethercycle. So I picked her picture because it has a very bright white backdrop, which means I'm probably not even going to have to isolate her or take her out of the backdrop. I can just cut it up just as is and it should look fine. To begin, I need to make sure that my grid is on right here and that I am snapping to that grid, because as I make my slices with my marquee tool, I want them to all be matching. If you want to do something totally different and have them very mismatched, then you probably don't want your grid on. I'm going to use the marquee tool, specifically the rectangular marquee right here. You can press the letter M or click on it. I'm going to slice her up in 1/2 inch increments, so you can see that my rulers here are going to help me do that, and the grid as well. So I'm going to start at 1/2 inch and I'm going to drag a rectangle over to 1 inch. Because the grid is on, my mouse is going to snap, so I don't have to be perfect. It's going to help me make sure that it lines up. So there's 1/2 inch to 1, 1.5 to 2. You can use whatever increments work for you, and you can also go in and change what your grid looks like. If these increments don't work, you can change it up. You do that in Edit Preferences. Okay, so there she is with all of her marquee selections. By the way, you have to have Add to Selection clicked. Otherwise, every time you make a new rectangle, it's going to make a new rectangle. But in Add to Selection, each new one that I drew added to the one that was there before. So now I want to make a copy of those slices from the background layer and put them on their own layer. So I'm going to press Ctrl J. And if I turn this off, now you can see there's that selection. And now I want to make a copy of the opposite. So here's how I do that. Control click on this layer, on layer 1, right on the thumbnail here. Control click selects all of the pixels on that layer, so my slices that are already there. And then I want to select the opposite. So I'm going to go to select inverse, or Control Shift I if you want to be fast and work on the keyboard. Okay, now I'm selecting everything else. Well, on this layer, everything else is transparent. It's the checkerboard. But on this layer, everything else is the rest of her face. So now I'm going to do another Control J. So now she's reassembled. What I'm going to do is take one of these and move it over, or maybe I'm going to move both, and realign her. I'm going to use the Move tool to do this, letter V on the keyboard, or you can press the Move tool here. Now if I move her over too much, then now each stripe is covering up the stripe below it, but now I'm mostly moving left to right, but it could be interesting and really weird to go vertically instead, or take some slices and go each direction. Or maybe it's weird to just move it a tiny bit to where it almost looks real, but makes the viewer look at it a second time. So you're going to find whichever one of these works best. Now if the mouse is annoying you because it kind of jumps around, the keyboard can also just use the arrows to line this up. So you're going to find whichever one looks best to you. I actually think that I liked the shifting up and down the best for this picture. But you find what works best for you. And you're going to have to recrop it whichever way you go, because if you move it left or right, then you're going to have some extra space on one side or the other. So I'm going to crop using this letter C crop tool. I'm going to crop without a size, just making sure to get rid of all the transparent pixels. Now my finished product doesn't really work because I think the initial crop was too tight, so I lost this side of her hair or her ear that would have been there. I think I'd like that symmetry of this part coming back over here, so I'd be more careful with that when I shot it. But there is your finished product using the marquee tool to slice up and move around a portrait. A very quick way to do something kind of different. AP students, maybe something you could add to your portfolio. Okay, a couple things I've added that you might want to try. I did decide that I liked this picture a lot better in black and white than I did in color. So I've done that, not required, but just something to think about. And I thought about trying the horizontal stripes instead. So that's what these two are here. And then right now, the way that it is set, these are just like slices, like very sharp edges. But you could go in and do an effect here. So if you go to FX, I picked Outer Glow, and it was a pretty narrow line, so I made it a little bit bigger here with size. So now it's an 8-pixel line. And if I say OK, it gives some definition to those pieces that have split apart. And so this is another way to do it. Then I'd want to crop this out here. Or, so if we go back to our original, so there's the one set of vertical slices and the second split apart. It's looking okay, and I could add on the outer glow on this one as well. But then I took one of these layers and I cut it in two using the marquee tool. So with one of them on, I took the marquee tool and drew a box around half of the lines, copied and pasted them using Control J onto their own layers. So now I have these two layers over here that are just the left side, and layer 6 is the right side. And so putting them all together just widens out the area and adds more eyes and more lips and more complexity to the image. So then, and these also have the outer glow on them. And then I could crop and finish it up that way. All right, hopefully this is something you want to try out. It's pretty quick and easy and quite abstract, and definitely utilizes some of the elements and principles.